Point in the game. A Packer blitz forces Dawson to rush his throw. Willie Wood kicks it off and gallops all the way to the Chiefs' 5-yard line, where Mike Garrett makes a touchdown-saving tackle.
Every time you watch a sporting event on TV, what you probably first notice is the glorious, rousing spectacle playing out in front of your eyes. But what you can't see is the decades of tech history hidden beneath it. From the very beginning, sports have pushed forward technological developments. In fact, it was attempts at capturing racehorses in motion in the late 1800s that laid some of the earliest groundwork for developing movies. Once TV came onto the scene, the relationship between sports and technology only accelerated.
One of the things about football, if we're talking specifically about television, is that the field lends itself to that medium because it's more or less the same size as a television screen. The constant that we've started to see, especially from like the time of about the mid-60s on, is that these games are made for television, and the televisual spectacle comes first. The game itself comes second. There's always a new little gadget or gizmo.
One of the most notable early examples of that was instant replay, which has now seeped into all kinds of live video. Legend has it that we have a 1963 Army-Navy football game and a TV producer named Tony Verna to thank for instant replay. Verna directed football games for CBS and was looking to fill breaks in the action. Back then, the technology required for instant replay involved huge tape decks that needed to be stored in an equally huge truck. It was no easy feat. But when the Army quarterback made a touchdown in the fourth quarter, he was able to get everything together for what's thought of as TV's first ever instant replay. Technological developments that were brewing in other fields made their way into sports, only to be perfected there. Take the telestrator, aka that device for drawing on the screen you always see. Though it was originally invented in the 1950s by a physicist, it was football in the 80s that helped turn it into the recognizable tool it is now, used everywhere from medical settings to classrooms.
Early versions of it were developed for weather programming and news programming, but it really kind of took off as a technology when CBS started using it, and they unveiled it more or less in I think it was the 1982 Super Bowl. Super Bowls have a long tradition of kind of debuting new technologies because it's trying to create this sort of spectacular identity for that media event. And so the telestrator is this thing that was used to kind of help us to understand what was happening in a replay situation that's since been adopted by a whole bunch of other types of media.
Along the way, not everything has been so linear though. Think about one of the most recognizable features of any football game on TV, that iconic yellow first down line. The line made its first TV appearance in a 1998 game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. Though it was new to football viewers at the time, it emerged from the ashes of another sports tech invention, the much maligned glow puck. In the mid-90s, in an attempt to make hockey easier to watch, Fox Sports unveiled a system for keeping track of the puck, in which a blue glow surrounded it at all times.
It's a merger of science and sports. A regulation puck installed with infrared emitters that send signals to sensors around the ice rink.
They had this like weird blue streak that they were using for a while to kind of help trace the puck. And the idea was, you know, it was a reasonable one. The puck is hard to see. This is before HD television too, but it didn't work very well. And two, it was just kind of distracting and people didn't like it, so they shelved it.
But the team engineers behind the glow puck, however, left Fox Sports to form a company called SportsVision, where they actually would create a major tech breakthrough.
A lot of it's kind of trial and error, you know, where you have something like the puck thing that doesn't work, but then you have the first down line, which is now kind of indispensable, I think, to the television viewer. Even if I go to a football game in person, which doesn't happen too often, I'm disappointed that I don't see the first down line. And I'm also disappointed that, you know, when I go to a game and there aren't instant replays immediately on the Jumbotron, right? We've kind of been conditioned as a culture to imagine sports happening in the way that they unfold on television.
And to this day, every time you turn on the TV, you're seeing the echoes of sports innovations, even in the seemingly most innocuous places, from awards shows to the news.
You could see other types of programming, live programming in particular, trying to borrow certain elements from sports. You know, a lot of reality television, award shows. The best example is if you look at news programs. You know, just watch some cable news for a while and you can see all sorts of innovations that were developed specifically for sports. The ticker on the bottom, which at ESPN they call that the bottom line, right? That's a staple of news programming. The rundown column of different topics that are coming up that you see on news programming, where it will say like, you know, coronavirus, tax bill, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's something that was developed for sports television. And you see news programming picking this up and adopting it in their own ways constantly. And sports took the ticker from, you know, Wall Street. You know, they didn't, there were tickers that existed before sports did it, but they kind of created an aesthetic for it that worked within their programming. A lot of these narratives are kind of simplified. Like, I think it's Tony Verna who sort of claims that he created the instant replay. That is kind of sort of true. It was sort of already in the works by other outlets. It's never as simple as like, oh, there's just this one genius who's in his, you know, tower thinking all day and he comes up with this great idea that changes everything. So when you have a story like, you know, the man who created the instant replay, you know, it's kind of mostly fairy tale. But what does sports television do if not tell us fairy tales? So why not?